Alright, welcome everybody. This is Grandmaster Sam Shankland here, and I'm here to give you another video showing a key position that I'm going to look at with DecodeChess. So, this is a game that was played between Anand and Kramnik at, I believe, the 2008 World Championship match, the Battle of Bonn. And I thought this was a very notable game because going into this game, he had lost three and hadn't won any, and there were three games left. So he was all but done in this match, and it was clear that Anand was just playing much better chess, and I mean, this was one of the more dominating World Championship matches in chess history. But at the same time, it shows that while Anand, who was clearly on form and was clearly the better player, when he got totally outplayed in this one particular game, there's no doubt Kramnik was just the much better player this time in this particular game. It's very interesting to me to try to figure out what went wrong when somebody that strong went down so hard. And this specific phase of the game where Anand got outplayed is not even remotely tactical. And for anyone who saw my previous video here for Decode on the game between Fischer and Petrosian, I think that in general Decode is not substantially better for helping you spot tactics than a standard engine. But what it is a lot better at is explaining key strategic ideas. And when you look at a position like this one, it's pretty clear there's nothing wildly tactical going on, at least not yet. And you can sort of tell that this game is going to be played under more strategic grounds. And honestly, I remember I was a pretty good player at the time of this game, and I almost didn't even understand what happened and how Anand could have just lost in three more moves from here, basically. But Decode does a very good job of explaining the key strategic theme. So Kramnik in this position played Queen A6, and this is a good move. It's the machine's top choice, and I remembered it was the machine's top choice, but okay, computer tells you to play Queen A6. Why? We're not worried about black playing A6. The knight on B6 is hanging. But when he starts to say, threatens to play A4, then it starts to make perfect sense. We'd like to play something like A4 and A5, but our queen on A5 is in the way. And if we start with A4 directly, then black will be ready with knight C4. So this move, Queen A6, is a very good decision because it allows white to play A4, A5 next. And here, this is the spot where Anand messed up, and he made he's probably still more or less okay here, and he made, in my opinion, his only serious mistake of the game, and it was immediately decisive. Vichy played F6, which, I guess it makes some sense. His queen on H5 is a little bit sidelined. I think it's pretty clear he does not have the kind of attacking forces needed to go launch a kingside attack. So it makes perfect sense for black to play F6 and then bring his queen back to F7 or E8 to retreat it to somewhere more intelligent. But here we start to see where things are going wrong. It says the position is about equal, but black should beware of white playing A4. When you look at this position and it says, oh, bishop E6 is the best move, and F6 as a non-played was a big mistake, and that's what the computer would tell you. I'm sure if you just had a standard engine running and it goes and you put F6 in like Vichy played, it's going to immediately move up for white. You're like, wait, why was F6 such a big mistake? It looks like a totally sensible move. This is where it really helps to have something like Decode. So it says black should be aware of white playing A4, and when it says explaining the best line of Stockfish, it says that following bishop E6, which is beneficial, it supports playing knight C4 by controlling the square C4. So after bishop E6, we're ready to have knight C4 next. So for example, one variation it gives is after bishop E6, A4, H6, A5, knight C4. Here the knight has come to a nice square. This is another point that you'll realize is that F6, as Vichy played, means that this knight C4 move would become impossible because the bishop would be hanging on E6. So this is a very important thing. So it says, enables bishop C4. There's some lines where this happens. So for example, in the event of bishop E6, if rook AB1, black can play bishop C4, which will kick the queen off of its perch. And then it allows the queen on H5 to guard E2. So for example, in this line here where it gives bishop E6, A4, H6, and here where this knight comes here, the queen is ready to come. The queen is ready to hit the E2 square, so the knight won't get trapped. So there's all sorts of reasons that bishop E6 is very helpful, but the biggest ones, and you can see from the top, it all comes down to the C4 square. It says supports playing knight C4 by controlling the square C4, prevents playing C4 by guarding the square C4. So for example, bishop E6, white cannot play C4. the closer it is to the top, the more relevant these things will be. And when it comes to supporting playing knight c4, bishop e6 is definitely the best move. So here, it's interesting because, for example, if you look at this is the annotations that I just copied from ChessBase. And, for example, f6 wasn't even mentioned in the annotations to the game, which sort of implies that whoever was annotating this didn't even realize that this was a critical moment, which you can't blame them for. The annotations were from a long time ago, before computers were like really good in pointing this out. But this is but it really shows that Decode does a very good job of explaining why some of these decisions are poor and what you could do better. So f6 here from Anand was a big mistake because now following a4, which again threatens to play a5, we want to go a4 a5. That's the simplest thing. Following a4, black has a tough position. So black plays queen f7. It's good because it controls e6. So, for example, what we can see is that the event of something like queen f7, bishop f1, bishop e6. We already talked about this, how in the event of f6 that that the bishop on e6 will be hanging, which prevents you from playing from moving the knight after a5, and here that won't be an issue, as after a5, knight c4, queen f7 was a good move. Here we cannot play queen takes e6. So, yeah, it sort of says queen f7 is good because we're getting bishop e6 through. And then this is actually how the game did continue. a4, queen f7, bishop f1, and again here it says, you know, prevents bishop c4, prevents knight c4 by guarding the square c4. Black cannot play knight c4, and we're ready to play after, for example, bishop f1. If black wastes a move on h5, we're ready to play a5, and once more black is not ready for knight c4, things like this. So bishop f1, that makes a lot of sense. But after bishop e6, this is where another really nice move comes in. So here it says that it's criticizing Kramnik for playing rook ab1 rather than rook eb1, but I don't really think that's wildly relevant. What it's really explaining is why a rook coming to b1 is so important. So it says threatens to play a5. The big point here, I think, is that black is not able to play bishop c4. So what we see is the top one here, for example, knight on b6. Here, black cannot play bishop c4, because after bishop takes c4, queen takes c4, white can play rook takes b6. This is the key point. So, for example, if you were to have pushed a5 directly, then black could maybe play knight c4 without running into rook b7. He could play bishop c4, take, and knight c4 without running into rook b7. This move, rook to b1, where, you know, again, the computer seems to think that rook eb1 was better than rook ab1. I don't really feel a need to pick a fight with Kramnik on this one. But the big point is that it threatens the knight on b6, and it stops black from playing this all-important move, bishop c4. So, proceeding along with the way the game went, it says black played c4, rook d8 would have been better, but as you can already see, it suggests that the best continuation is also winning for white. So at this point, I think it's already basically gone. But I think Decode did a very good job of explaining why f6 was not great, what white's best plan was with a4, a5, and finally, this very important point with rook b1, stopping black from playing bishop c4. So after rook ab1, the game proceeded with c4, and now the rest should not be wildly complicated, but what we can see is that white played a5. It's good because it threatens the knight on b6. Black cannot just waste a move, as the knight will get taken. And so we can see that in the event of a5, once the knight is kicked away, the rook lands on b7, and this is bad news. So after c4, Vichy didn't last long. The game continued a5, knight a4, and then it says in this position, white plays rook b7. It's good because it threatens to play rook takes f7, threatens the black pawn at a7. This is sort of the area where, in general, I think the marginal benefit of using Decode as opposed to like using a more traditional chess engine is not as high. I mean, when it says the key point is that of rook b7 is that we threaten to take the queen and threaten to take the pawn. This is easy enough to understand, I think, even without the machine telling you or the program telling you. So this is sort of, once it gets to more concrete stuff, I think it's still probably a better program to use for lower to intermediate level players to make sure they really understand what's going on. But its benefit, I think, is somewhat reduced compared to what we just saw in the strategic themes. So following rook knight a4, rook b7, queen e8, and queen d6, it says the best move is queen d6 because it threatens to play rook e7. That's easy enough. And yeah, here after queen d6, actually Anand just resigned because I mean, if you look at the engine's recommendation is to get this bishop all the way over to g4, and after queen b4, the knight is hanging and trapped, and rook a1 is coming, and bishop c4 is coming, and and a7 is hanging, and black just has endless problems and is absolutely busted. So, understandably here, Vichy called it a day and gave Kramnik his one win of the match. And while this was certainly a tough game for Anand, he came back and made a draw the next day with white from a good position to clinch the title. So I thought this was a pretty good example of showing, though, world championship level, where the mistakes were, not only where they were, but why they were mistakes, the ways that you can take it, that Kramnik took advantage of them, of the strategic problems in black's position, and really this why f6 was a mistake, and white's big plan with a4, a5, and the point that rook b1 prevents black from playing bishop c4. I think Decode did a very good job of explaining all this. So thanks very much for watching, and perhaps I'll see you again sometime for another Decode Chess video.